So the Bible sets precedent right away that we're to not be alone, that we're to find our helper, that we're to seek to get married. Right away, our cultural bells start ringing. Yeah, whatever, right? Whatever. Seek to get married, whatever. Where do I go? So here we're going to get into the biblical side. I'm going to rush through this a little bit. I believe you date to get married. It's that simple. Your whole purpose of dating is to find a wife, find a husband. I think that's biblical. I think that it's not just to pass the time. It's not to test drive cars and feel the leather. It's just about finding that person that you are now going to spend the rest of your life with. I also believe that you are supposed to marry one person and stay married to that one person. Now, the Bible does give room for exclusion in that, meaning that if there is adultery committed, that you actually get the free card to walk. Did you know that in Europe right now, in some areas of Europe, they actually have, you know how you got to get like a marriage license in Ontario to get married or have your banns read at the church? Did you know that in Europe they have what they call a 4-year marriage license? It's a contract that lasts for 4 years. So you get married, and you're married for 4 years, and then you get to make a free decision of whether you're going to stay married or whether you're going to annul the marriage and walk away. So they've given up on the whole thing about how marriage is such a mess. 50% of all marriages end up in divorce, and the statistics are higher in the church. Yeah, they're high 50s. They're low 50s just overall. They're high 50s in the church. So we can now strip off our masks and stop pretending like we're perfect and get into reality and realize that there's not much that separates us from our culture and the world. There really isn't, and it's sad. So if you want to take a 4-year trial, move to Europe. They also sell women in the windows. So the big question here is how do you have a godly relationship? How do you have a godly dating relationship? Because let's face it, we're all going to date. We know that. It's part of our culture. I've broken it down into 4 types of relationships that we can have. 3 of them are very biblical. 1 of them is totally, absolutely not biblical. And I would say it's absolutely wrong. Okay, so I'm going to get into that. But the first thing I want you to ask yourself is simply this. If we are tied to our relationship with Jesus, and that is the relationship, and that's the relationship that leaks into the rest of your relationships, you need to ask yourself these questions, especially if you're Christian. Before you're ever to start dating, ask yourself this. How is your relationship with Jesus? If your relationship with Jesus is really bad, you're not ready to start dating. Because you need to fix that relationship before you can begin another one. You see, your covenant relationship that will be with your spouse one day, it needs to be healthy, and the only way for it to be healthy is you to have the proper view of God and be in a good relationship with Jesus. That's not about like, okay, if you're not reading your Bible every day, you're not ready to date. Oh, come on, none of us would ever date then. Because I read my Bible every day, but I'm paid to do it, right? So, we just wouldn't be there. So you need to ask yourself that. How is your relationship with Jesus? Second question you need to ask yourself is, do you believe in cultural lies? What I mean by that is, are you letting culture determine your life? Meaning, are you into porn? Are you into clothes and trendiness? Is that what drives you? What has a grip on your life? And again, that ties into your relationship with Jesus. So if you're letting cultural views shape who you are, you're not ready to start dating. You will not have a healthy relationship. It'll be like all the disaster relationships that we have out there today, because the relationship with Jesus isn't healthy, and you're letting culture seep into your life too much. So it's not about living in a bubble, being a weirdo. Okay, it's not about being that. It's not about being Bible Bob. It's not that way at all. It's just about simply living your life and living your life to the fullest. Not meaning like big houses and lavish cars, but meaning that you're caring for the widows, caring for the poor. You have good self-esteem about yourself, meaning you don't have that mask on, and that you're in a relationship with Jesus. The third question is this: do you accept that marriage is not just for happiness? That if you run out and get married right now, that's going to solve all your problems. You're going to be happy the rest of your life. Because it's not the answer to happiness. This is what marriage really is. Marriage is not just for happiness, but also for holiness. I actually believe that in order to be holy, when you enter into a covenant relationship with God, first of all, and then with your spouse is that one person that can call you on things and see the sin in your life that none of your buddies ever will. So, your marriage will not always be happy, but it will lead to holiness because you're calling each other on things. That's a healthy marriage. That's when my wife, like when I'm preaching to you guys and I say something that's really hard to live up to, because I got to live what I preach, right? I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't. And it's something that I say and I'm like, shoot, I wish I'd keep my mouth shut. Now I got to do that. I got to live that. And she will call me on that and make sure that I do live that. And she'll call me on the sin in my life. And she'll call me out on different things. A lot of times it's privately, obviously. It's not in public, but sometimes it is. That's awesome. But you need to understand and accept that marriage is just not for happiness, but also for holiness. You have to allow your spouse or the person that you're dating to point out your weaknesses. You have them. The most successful people in life, I mean just at doing life, are the people that realize they have strengths and weaknesses. And they're willing to work on their weaknesses, and they're willing to work on their strengths, and they're willing to take constructive criticism from the people that they're the most close to. Most of the time, that's your spouse and God. Because God will correct you in ways that we're not always comfortable with, but sometimes it's a really tough way through different testings and different things in our life. And He'll do that through our relationships. So let's break it down to those 4 relationships. I'm 21 minutes in already. This is going to kill me. The first one is prearranged marriage. Oh, yeah, we're going to go there. Prearranged marriage is very biblical. Hey, lights. Prearranged marriage is very biblical. It's in the Old Testament. And yes, we're going to go there. If you all look under your seats, there's a number. And there's a number 1 and another number 1, and that matches up with you. I'm not kidding. Come on. And that's who you're going to marry. I'm just going to prearrange it for you. That was a bad joke, and I stole it from someone else. So wasn't even mine. Prearranged marriage is a biblical concept that does not work in North America. It doesn't. I mean, anybody here willing to let mom and dad hook you up with whoever they want to? Okay? Now, the concept of prearranged marriage does work in other cultures. I know a pastor who is from India, and he was prearranged to marry his wife, and he has one of the most amazing relationships that I've ever seen. You know how I've talked about the fact that love's a choice? Love is not that fluffy feeling, that love is a choice. So a prearranged marriage can actually work because you can choose to love that person. And the concept here is not this like from birth that mom and dad prearranged because they got another buddy and it's about exchanging money and stuff like that. An actual prearranged marriage is simply this, that your mom and dad know you the best. And that they then go out and they find somebody. That did happen right around some of your guys' ages, like late teens, that area, or early 20s, where mom and dad would go out and they would find a girl for you. And that's who you would marry. And this husband and wife that I know have an amazing ministry. They have an amazing, amazing marriage.